And if you have a reason, that's fine. But like what we need is just really a reason to stop looking and just work with one. Because it really is only by working with something and trying it on an ongoing basis that we learn what we really need.
ADHD Rewired, episode 409. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host, and I have ADHD. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection, and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free and secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups. Learn all about our award-winning coaching and accountability groups. You can co-work with us in our Adult Study Hall virtual membership community. You can do all of these things by going to our website at ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. Today's guest is Brittany Smith. Brittany is a productivity, ADHD, and technology coach and recently published her first course, From Aggravated to Navigated, Choosing a Task Management System with ADHD. She has a Master's of Science degree in Cognitive Neuroscience lab at the University of Oregon. The nerd is strong with this one. Brittany uses geeky pop culture and cognitive science to help her clients and ADHD Guild members get more done with less stress. Brittany, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I am thrilled to have you here. I met you when you were doing a session, I think, at the CHAD conference, right?
Yeah.
And it was on improv, right?
Mine wasn't improv.
Yours wasn't improv. Am I confusing you with someone else? Probably.
It's possible. I mean, we met at the conference. Like, which first meeting is the real one? Like, who knows? Right? Like, those are so overwhelming.
It's because you told me 5 minutes ago that you did improv.
I did.
And then so that, those wires crossed in my brain.
No, you're good.
Okay. So I love this idea of the fact that you help people kind of choose their tools, choose their apps. You know, because for many years I was presenting a lot on technology and apps, and then I started to become like the app guy, and then I was like feeling claustrophobic by that, and I was like, oh no, it's not about the apps, it's about the principles that we use towards those apps, but having the tools is important too. So,
and you're right. Like, sometimes, don't tell anyone. I disguise it as, hey, let's talk about the apps. And we will, like, eventually. But first, all these things about, okay, but how do you do things so that you will be successful no matter which tool you choose? And then we'll talk about the apps.
Awesome. So you like to make stuff suck less.
This is my life's mission.
Let's just dive right in then.
Okay.
With task management apps, how do we make these things suck less, or even choosing what task management app to use?
The first thing everyone needs to know is task management is going to suck a little. That's the truth. That's life. It's how do we figure out how to make them be a less bad fit for our brains so that we make sure we know what we need to do. Because the most chaotic thing to do is to keep everything in our heads.
So you're saying not only should we stop looking for the perfect app, we should actually lower the bar profoundly by saying, let's find the one that just sucks less.
Yeah. And where do you want to start right now? Now, that doesn't mean there aren't some things that we should be looking at to cut things from the list that maybe we don't naturally think of. And it's not usually the feature set. Eventually, when you have really good habits, it might be the feature set. But in the short run, it might be something like, this app makes me tap 6 times to add a due date. And that's just too many taps. So anything that gets too fiddly that we feel too disconnected from is usually going to be a bad fit for us. If you feel like everything in an app is invisible, maybe an app isn't the right choice for you. Those sort of like tactile, visceral, do I feel like I can see it kind of things.
You know, it's funny you say that because I use Asana, and I just recently upgraded to the pro version after using the free version for many, many years. And I only updated to the pro version when Jessica McCabe had showed me her project management, how she has her Asana set up for her team. And I was like, whoa, the pro version does all of that. So I like immediately like upgraded, and I've been just really liking Asana a lot more. But while some of the things that I love about it also have more clicks, which is also kind of annoying, because like one of the things that I love about it is that if you know after you complete a certain task, it's going to then generate another task, you can actually set that up ahead of time. And so when you mark complete on that task, it will then generate that next task that you've already set up. But that takes a couple clicks.
Yeah, it does. It does. And there are different rules when you're looking for a team as opposed to just for yourself. So
let's start with just for self, and then we can maybe explore some things for teams.
Totally.
So my first question, Brittany, is what do you use?
The one that I suggest nobody ever start with, OmniFocus.
Okay. And give us a 30-second, like in a nutshell, what's OmniFocus and why do you think that no one should start with it?
So in the course, I classify things in different categories, and complex task management is not where anyone should start before you build the habits, which is why I spend a lot of time talking about ways to make things successful ahead of time. And usually just starting simple is a really good start. That's why I classified it in the name of complex, because there's going to be a lot of fiddly stuff to it, but at the same time, it's not trying to do too many things. So it's just because it's so easy to get lost in the weeds, and we tend to shut down when we have too many options, or we can go too deep in on the task management setup and not actually do any of the tasks in it.
Been there, done that. Yes. I still remember it was probably almost a decade ago having this. I mean, I think back to it now and it's like, duh, but this realization that having my phone remind me to like say, call my mom doesn't actually get my mom called.
Right?
Right.
Because that's not like a quick, like if your relationship with your mom is the kind that means you're going to talk for a period of time, that's a requirement of that task in order for it to happen. Now, the programs have gotten a little fancier where it'll try to be smart and like give you a button to push, which works, some percentage of the time. That's not 100, but it still doesn't tell you when to do it. Like, when do you have a block of time in your schedule? And alerts and this is really important, especially for people with ADHD, alerts at the wrong time decrease the likelihood you'll do it, not increase it.
Say that again.
Alerts at the wrong time, as in when you're not going to actually do it, decrease the likelihood that you'll do the task.
And why is that?
Well, we've built up resistance to it, for one. Usually there's a reason we didn't do it the first time, usually because that type of reminder wasn't good for that. Like, if it's reminding you when you don't have a block of time to call your mom, that is not helpful. That is at the wrong time. And the longer it goes on, the more we'll sort of get that rejection sensitivity, sort of negative feelings about I totally should have already done that thing. Mm-hmm. And the more that builds up, the less we want to do it. Even if you actually want to talk to your mom, you'll develop a more negative response to that reminder over time, the more you see it, even if you want to do the thing.
One of the things that I encourage people to do is to not use push notifications to remind you of specific tasks, but use push notifications to remind you to check your task list or your calendar. Because it's sort of like, for me, curiosity is like my Achilles heel. Like, one of the worst things that someone can do to me is like, I want to tell you something. Oh, you know what? Never mind. It's like, oh, no, don't do that to me, because now I really, really want to know what it is, right? So when if you have a question that says, hey, have you checked your priorities today? Or have you checked to see I'm like, did I? Like, what's on there? Even saying if there's something really important you need to check, having the push notification just say, you have a really important reminder on your task list. Have you seen what it is? Because then you're like, wait, what
so
is
it's phrased in a way that encourages curiosity.
Right.
Nice. Yeah. Task phrasing is a whole other thing that needs to be addressed separately.
And it's interesting because when I look at the sort of principles of task management, I spend a lot of time in my coaching groups talking about task phrasing. I have this exercise called the anatomy of the to-do list. And we talk a lot about not just verbing your list, but using what I call vision verbs. So it's like, how many of us have on our list, look up so-and-so? So I'm like, unless your task is like looking up into the sky, don't put look up on your to-do list. Put Google, because we can all imagine in our mind's eye what Google looks like.
Right.
All right. So Tell us more about how you help people choose task management apps and what we should be looking at.
So the most important thing is really learning about yourself. Like if you look back, what has worked for you before? What hasn't worked for you before? I mean, in the course, I go through and ask those questions and encourage people to write them down and sort of self-coaching questions. What's worked, what didn't work, and then trying to tease apart why. And then I talk about a lot of the principles of how ADHD and task management interact and where it may have caused problems in the past, hoping that people can continue to look back on that previous attempts that they've made and figure out, oh, that's why that went wrong. And then internalize a little bit better. And then we talk about like, what's your personal style? Because just because you have ADHD does not mean you have the same personal style as that other person sitting next to you with ADHD.
And what do you mean by personal style?
It's a few things, but it really adds up to what would you be comfortable enough to interface with? If you hate writing on paper or you love writing on paper, you already don't want to look at your task list. Let's be honest. There's stuff on there you don't want to know exists. Why would we add resistance by adding something that you don't like the look of, you don't like the feel of? You know, if I hate all my pens, either maybe I should look at not pens or really make sure I have the right pens everywhere. What's your thing that's going to get to you and might get in the way? We can't have any additional barriers that we don't need to make you not want to look at your list.
Do you have a pen? I was going to use the word fetish. That is not what I was thinking, though.
But I don't know a better one.
Thank you.
No, I have a lot of friends who are pen people, though.
Okay. So materials matters.
Yeah. And it's not, try not to build it up where, oh, I can't task because I don't have the right thing, but just to be observant and notice yourself and notice like, I'm not wanting to look at that and be curious. Why don't I want to look at it? And sort of try to figure out. I mean, the fact is, if these things were easy, we wouldn't be struggling with them. There's a reason. I mean, whether it's a task that you didn't get done or a task management system you didn't maintain, there's probably information in there that you could use to make it just suck a little less.
So what should we be looking at then for people who are, maybe they are task management app hopping and maybe do a new app every week or two because they're looking for that quote unquote perfect app, which doesn't exist. I've downloaded all of them. The last time I presented on apps, I had a screenshot or I kind of like clipped together all of the icons for all of the task management apps that I've ever downloaded. I mean, there were like hundreds. And so, so I'm like, I've done the work for you. There is no perfect app.
I love that visual. That's great.
Because it's like, sometimes I need to switch apps just for the point of novelty. And I think what's really important is that you're clear that that's why you're doing it.
Yeah. And that you have a way, like something simple enough built into your system that will help you when you do make that transition. So you can do it mindfully. So you can do it without too many issues. I mean, if you're the kind of person who loves to switch systems and you love automating, that's a pretty big job because now you're going to switch all your automations. So I would recommend if you're a person who likes automating, you stick to one.
So what would be a great app for if you like automating?
Todoist has the most automations that are the most versatile because that's what Todoist does. And again, this is a complex task management app. So it's got tons of things. If you're on the Apple platform, you can use shortcuts to automate quite a lot in reminders if you're looking for something simpler. And so that's a pretty good call. And there's some third-party tools for shortcuts that can just do even more. It's pretty cool.
I so badly want to like ask you questions about Apple shortcuts, but that's not what we're talking about right now.
Could we do that another time?
Yes.
Could we do that? Okay.
Yes, because I would sign up for the course if you're teaching about shortcuts because I love automation and I love the idea of if this then that, which is really what shortcuts are. But I haven't really been able to make them work for me, so I'm like I'm probably doing something wrong.
No, I am so deep on shortcuts. I was using it long before Apple acquired them. I had this year of panic. Like, is Apple going to kill it?
Wow. Okay. So
I run my whole business out of shortcuts.
Wow. Okay. So you've gone deep into this. So
yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about Todoist. So I know this is a podcast, so we can't have a visual for this. So describe what does it look like?
It's fine. It's not as ugly as it used to be, but its job is its number one thing is it's everywhere. You can get an Outlook extension. I don't even know if they work because lots of things in Outlook don't, but like there's an Outlook extension, there's a Gmail extension, there's every browser extension. You can get it on every device possible. It's ridiculous. Where it's like, that's our thing. We want to be everywhere. We want everyone to see it from everywhere. That's Todoist big thing, which is why it has some of the most versatile automations, fewer for shortcuts, which is why it would be less of a good fit for me. OmniFocus and Things both have some, but they're also primarily just Apple devices. So
you said OmniFocus and Things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, Todoist, it's sort of plain. The main reason it really wasn't an option for me really was that it doesn't have defer dates.
Say more about that.
So a defer date allows you to not see the item until you can actually take action on it.
Okay.
And there's some people who work around with due dates, but the problem with having lots of due dates is getting overloaded with red badges of death.
One of the things that I'll do in Asana, if the date comes and it's not happening on that date, instead of just moving the date forward, because I don't like to see the red either.
Yeah.
So I'll push it forward to when I think I can do it. But I have a specific tag set up where it says behind schedule, or out of another tag that's stuck/need help.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Right. That's a really good one.
So
I like that
it
tag.
tells me that like, oh, I missed the date on this. I moved it forward. So I have like a sort of a second chance or third chance. But I'm tracking and have data in those tasks that like, how much am I moving this forward?
Yeah. Yeah. And I can't say how much, and it's a little bit of a tangent, but I can't say how much I love that need help because I mean, I have a tag that's talk to my coach. Like I don't see an ADHD coach because I need to learn all about ADHD at this juncture. I see an ADHD coach because sometimes I get my brain twisted around on a thought and I need an external person to walk it through. So if I get stuck on something, I just give it my coached by tag and now I know.
And then so when you are ready for your next session, you search.
I look at those when I'm sitting down, getting
That's
ready
awesome.
for my next coaching session.
That's
Yep.
awesome. All right.
Getting coached session.
All right. So we talked about a little bit of Todoist. I talked a little bit about Asana. You mentioned OmniFocus. I know that there are so many more. So what I want to do first is take a quick break and encourage people to quickly just check your task list. And when we come back, we're going to keep talking about how do we choose a task list that works for you so it sucks a little bit less. We will be right back. Since 2014, ADHD Rewired has been helping people grow through community. And nothing embodies this more than our 10-week intensive coaching and accountability groups with 750 alumni who have gone through one of our 62 groups over the course of 26 seasons. One thing is for certain, we can do hard things, especially when we are in a supportive community. Being misunderstood by others or not understanding ourselves can be so painful. I know this because this was me, and I created ADHD Rewired because I don't want people to feel alone, helpless, or hopeless. We do not have to go through life being misunderstood. I know I don't need to tell you that ADHD is real, that its challenges are real, because you live it every day. I just want you to know that you really don't have to face any of this alone. So if you want to learn and grow and take your ADHD management to the next level with a group of amazing people who truly do understand ADHD and the challenges we face, then join us for our next season of coaching and accountability groups. Go to coachingrewired.com and click on the big button at the top of the page and add your name to our spring interest list. And then keep an eye out in your email so you can stay up to date for our upcoming registration events. The dates for our spring sessions will be announced soon. Go to coachingrewired.com. That's coachingrewired.com. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from members of Adult Study Hall. ADHD Rewired is a virtual co-working community. It doesn't matter what you need to work on. If you know that you do better when you're around other people, come try it out at adultstudyhall.com. With real-time accountability, our members have been getting things done that have been sitting on their lists for months and even years. Membership to the Adult Study Hall community is only $19.99 a month, and it's free for the first week. So if you don't like it, just cancel it. But we do think you're going to love it. In addition to a dedicated 24/7 study hall room on Zoom, your membership includes our themed and guided sessions each week, including a session for writing, a session for job searches led by a coach and HR specialist, and one for tackling tasks that you've been putting off. Then we have 2 exercise sessions per week and 2 clean and decluttering sessions per week. More will be added soon. Join the virtual co-working community built for adults with ADHD. Whether you want to try out some real-time accountability in our 24/7 drop-in room or want guided and facilitated sessions with more structure to start tackling your toughest to-dos on your list, we'd love to have you. The doors are open at adultstudyhall.com. Come work with us. That's adultstudyhall.com. And we are back. All right. What other task management apps should we talk about?
I like going simple first.
Okay.
If you're looking at an app and what you want is kind of like a note, like a paper note, but one you won't lose because it's on your phone, there's notes apps you can use.
Interesting. Okay. So like anytime I hear that someone's like using their like notes app as a task, as like a way to keep track of their tasks, I was like, oh dear. All right. Like for me, it's like, I get really like, could that really work?
Not if you need reminders from it, right?
Okay.
Okay. Google Keep actually does have an alert, but it's for the entire note, which is, as we said, when the reminder alert doesn't say the specific thing, it's not going to be that useful to you. So it's something to be cautious about because the thing we most need to avoid are irrelevant alerts. And yes, that means if you're using your phone for anything remotely productive, go and turn off all the notifications that you don't actually need in your life.
Oh my God. Yes, yes, and yes. Well,
we call this the Brittany soapbox in my household.
I will. Can I share that soapbox with you?
Yes, there's lots of room on the soapbox. Please come stand next to me.
I had
we'll preach the gospel.
So last week I had a member of one of my coaching groups who was sharing an update, and we were in week 9 of the coaching group, and he's sharing an update, and I'm hearing his computer like ding, 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 and I'm just like, wait, did we miss the memo from week 1 to turn your notifications off? Like, what's going on? I was like horrified because it's just like we get distracted so easily. There's no reason why we need to have notifications on, especially for every like Slack message or any like whatever system you're using. Turn that shit off.
I made a YouTube video for Apple users. Like, let's walk through how to do it. Let's do it. Here's why. Because we can't afford it. Like, my heart goes out to people when I hear that. You are not giving your brain the best chance to thrive. We're going to do best at our deep work, not at the little one-off things. And you were robbing yourself of that opportunity.
Yeah. And I love the several months ago when they updated their Do Not Disturb functionality. Oh, brilliant. Like finally, I feel like someone with ADHD infiltrated that because it was like exactly what we needed. It working so customized when it goes to Do Not Disturb and not.
Mm-hmm. And different types of Do Not Disturb.
Yeah. So yeah,
and who can get through and who
exactly.
can't.
So it is valuable to set up those kinds of systems ahead of time. You know, it's like create the walls to support what you're doing inside that space. Yeah. Right. Okay. What other apps do you see people having success with in this simple realm?
So there's a weird format, and this is for people who want I want a note. I want it to be like a notebook, but it's on my phone so I don't lose it. And it's a format, not an app. I mean, there is also an app, but it's a format called TaskPaper. And TaskPaper can be as simple as you want, or at least on the Mac, you can go down some rabbit holes. There's a lot of wiggle room in there, but it's just elegantly simple. If you write out some words and put a colon at the end, it's a project. If you indent, that's a sublist of the project. If you put a dash in front of something, it's a task. If there's neither a colon or a dash, that line is a note. Okay, so I know that like before everyone rewinds, can you just repeat that one more time? Totally. And write it if you can. So if I write podcast and colon, I now have a project called podcast. And the next line, if it is indented, is a sub-item of podcast, the project. If I put a dash in front of it, it's now a task. If I put no dash, no colon, it's a note.
Okay.
So the upshot is you can easily check off the tasks. And so you can check them off. There is an app for iPhone called TaskPaper that will integrate with reminders. So if there's one that needs a reminder, it'll send it to a reminders list and you can get a time-specific reminder for an item. It's a little fiddly, but I love this format, if nothing else, for outlining a project. Like I may not keep it there, but I love it for just typing stuff on the go or visualizing it, because on the Mac app, you can collapse. But any app, and there are many out there, can make a project using this format because it's just a note. It's a plain text note.
Interesting. If that is something that you are interested in doing, one of the things that you may want to consider is creating a legend for yourself that is in front of you wherever you use this until you've internalized those legends. Because I've done a lot of things where I use symbols and then it's like, wait, what does this thing mean? Right? So it's like anytime I use symbols for shorthand for stuff, I always have to create a legend.
Totally. I love it.
That's working memory, right? It's like we're creating these shorthands, but now we have no idea what these things mean.
Oh, yeah. If I have a new drawer that I made so that it can put this type of thing in, a label maker label will go on that drawer because I will forget
all right, I'm going to follow
what the purpose of this drawer was.
I'm following you down this tangent for just a moment. So maybe 2 years ago, my ex-wife, we were still married at the time though, after me telling her, don't rearrange my drawers, decided to do this, decided to rearrange my drawers in a way that she thought made more sense. I might have had a little bit of a meltdown. And so she tried to repair it by putting sticky notes on each one of the drawers that label what's in it. Let me tell you, those sticky notes are still on the drawers today. I have no plan on taking them off because I literally, as soon as those notes would come off, I could not tell you where anything in those drawers are.
Yeah.
Okay. Coming out of the rabbit hole. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So the format with TaskPaper. What else?
Okay. So there is a built-in Google task that's associated with, okay, Google. I don't want to set anybody's things off.
I just set up and got both one of those and the other one.
The Echo, because you can say Echo without triggering anything.
Okay.
Yeah. Amazon was the only one who thought of that. The problem with the Echo one, though, is it's only local to the device, or it goes to the app, but like it doesn't help you in outside location.
I didn't realize that. Okay.
And on the Apple side, it's reminders.
Okay.
So the advantage of these, and don't ever do this. I'm actually on the opposite side, that my reminders are, if they're going to go off, they're going to be so specific and fast to finish.
Okay.
I live in multiple locations. So remind me when I arrive at blank to pack the blank.
Yeah. So context matters.
Yeah. And so I need the alert to go off when I arrive at the location, and I need it to be very easy to check off, right? Like I disobeyed my rule, and there's one that I still haven't managed to get off despite trying twice to delete it, because I was like, that's too long of an action for you to do it.
Well, it's, one of the things I tell people, there's a difference between a task and a project. In my brain, as just something that I like is a arbitrary sort of divider for me, a task can be done in 45 minutes or less. A project is more than 45 minutes.
And the important thing is that you divide it in a way that's logical to you.
Right.
Like the classic getting things done is 2 or more actions to complete. And so it really matters to the person how you define it. But whatever it is, make sure you know your own code, even if you need a legend.
When you mentioned getting things done, GTD, the one part was like, if you can do it in 2 minutes or less, do it now. Well, that just like rules me out because I can't do anything in 2 minutes or less. So I just skip that part.
I definitely have a 5 minute or less rule for that. Or it could be, do you think it could be in 2 minutes or less? Because then it's 5 to 10.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So we're talking about context.
Could we take a minute to talk about something like reminders?
Yeah. The reminders app, or just the reminders in general?
There's a Google equivalent,
okay.
Right? Like if you want to see it on a list, it's going to be Google Keep. Or if you want it to be a reminder, it's going to be hidden in the Google Tasks.
Okay.
On the web, you find it in the calendar, which makes no sense, but whatever. And that is like if you're going to use the assistant to quickly add tasks, be aware of context. And if it's going to alert you, make sure it's short, or to look at your wider list in a way that makes you curious. If you're going to add it in a way that's just, I want to add this to my list to think more, to have it as part of a list.
To capture it.
Yeah. As a capturing tool, don't add a reminder.
If you when you say don't add a reminder, don't add a notification reminder.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification. So you can have different lists. You can have grocery lists, which is one of the things we use it for, is shared grocery lists for the household. So we have a Costco list and we have a grocery list. And so we can very quickly say, oh, I think I'm out of pasta. Add to the right list. Because if I wait until I get into the app, I have already forgotten what it was we were out of.
I'm all kind of iOS stuff, and I use the grocery list on iOS. So I have a list called grocery. So when I use voice activation, because that's how I add stuff to my list. I don't open the app, it's all voice activation.
Yes.
Right. Because as soon as I turn my phone on, and I just recently got an Apple Watch, as soon as I started looking at the stuff, I'm distracted and I forgot what I was going to do.
Yeah.
So I'll say, add to my grocery list, blah, 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 blah. Right. And so it goes specifically on the grocery list. I did have a list specifically for Costco, but I actually found just from using it, just having all on the grocery list, it helps. It makes more sense to me.
I'm not the person who does the shopping. I'm just a list adder. So I will do whatever the person doing the shopping wants me to do.
Nice.
And he says that it needs to be by store, which is only bad if I am not sure where the thing comes from. But
so did you know that on iOS, they now have tags? Like you can tag certain items in the grocery list, Costco, and then you can search your Costco tags.
Yes, I will never get the other members of this household to do that, but it is awesome that you can. I'm lucky that they're using the list app at all.
So and it is funny because the iOS app for Apple, I think over the last year or so has gotten a lot more robust.
Yeah, they made a lot of improvements.
Like you can add pictures to it. You can share these lists. There's all kinds of things you can add subtasks. So I'm about a month into having an Apple Watch. And so something that I just actually updated today is do you have an Apple Watch?
Yes.
Okay. So I love that they call it complications. The little buttons or apps that you can have on the watch face, right?
Yes.
So I've been playing with the different ones that I like. You can have your particular reminders app on the to-do. So what I discovered is I don't use due dates on the reminders app, except for if I wanted to actually show up on that particular task on my face. So I have on here today to call my doctor. I had to take care of another task that I had been ignoring because it just said 2 tasks and I didn't want to have to push it because that is not helpful to me. To just say,
right. Yeah.
So I successfully, after 6-7 months of ignoring this reminder, I changed the lint trap on the basin for the sink for the washing machine today. Mm-hmm. It took me all of 3 minutes. And now I can have a very clear task on my watch.
Awesome.
So it is, yeah. It's little things like that. Because I don't look at Asana for anything home related.
Yeah.
I only look at it for work stuff.
Right.
For home stuff, I use iOS apps, or I use the dry erase board that's on my refrigerator.
Yeah.
All right, let's take another quick break, and when we come back, let's talk some more apps. We will be right back. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from our patrons who support us at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. I want to thank Lisa, Damien, Edward, Yang Yi, and Amy, who all became patrons this month. Thank you so much. Do you want additional support and more perks from this podcast, or just want to get the full episodes without the ads? Go to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon to see all the levels and all the perks. When you become a patron, you get to choose how much you want to support the show. And starting at $5 a month, you can get ad-free episodes of the show right in your favorite podcast player. Want to get a little taste of group coaching? At $25 a month, you can join me for a group coaching call every 4th Tuesday of the month. We did take a break last month, so we'll be back this Tuesday, January 25th, for our patron-only coaching call. That's Tuesday, January 25th at 3 p.m. Central, which is 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. Then it will be every 4th Tuesday of the month, again after that. If you love the show and what we're doing here at ADHD Rewired, but you haven't become a patron yet, I'd love to know what other perks you think would be helpful. And if you are already a patron, head on over to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. I'd love to hear your feedback on what else you might find helpful while being a member. Many of our patrons give simply because they want to support the work we are doing. And thank you to all of you. And to all of our patrons, old and new, thank you so much for supporting the show and for supporting our mission, growth through community. Consider becoming a patron today if you genuinely love the show. Support can start at any amount, with perks starting at just $5 a month. Truly, all of your support is very much appreciated. Join our Patreon community and find all the perks by going to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. That's ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. Thanks again for supporting the show. ADHD Rewired is not alone. We have more podcasts on the ADHD Rewired podcast network, including ADHD Essentials with Brenda Mahan, Hacking Your ADHD with Will Kerb, ADHD Diversified with MJ Siemens, and the ADHD Friendly Lifestyle with ADHD Rewired Coach Moira Maven. You can find all of these shows on the ADHD Rewired podcast network by going to ADHDrewired.com/podcast network. And you can join all of us, plus ADHD Rewired Coach Roxy Martin, every second Tuesday of the month on Zoom for a live Q&A. If you want to register to join us on Zoom and ask us your ADHD related questions, then head on over to ADHDrewired.com/events. You'll be able to register for our next live Q&A and even get reminders for all of the upcoming Q&As after that. If you find value in this show, don't forget to subscribe and share it with your friends and family or anyone who you think would benefit from listening. If you really love this show, one way that you can show your support is by leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other podcast app that accepts reviews. This really, really does help this podcast get in front of more people. Thank you for listening to the show and all of our shows. And a huge thank you from all of us in the ADHD Rewired podcast family for listening. We really hope you know that you are not alone. And we are back. All right. What other app should we explore today?
I actually thought of one while we were talking. I'd like to chat for a second about capture tools.
Okay.
Because we were talking about capturing reminders, capturing things for a grocery list. And there is this huge problem, which is you go into a list to write down the thing because you're trying to be a good task person and you open it. Sometimes you just open your phone and the thing is gone, let alone getting to the right app and then to the right list. And there are two options, one of which we've already sort of mentioned. There's a widget for Google Keep that has the option of always jumping you straight to a blank note, which means when you open it, it's a blank, just blank. So I don't have it because I know it's on Android. It's probably on iPhone now, but I haven't actually seen it. But I know there's an option to show blank for Google Keep.
Okay.
The one I actually use is called Drafts. It's a separate app and it's a capture tool first. It's also an incredibly powerful automation tool, but most people never need to use that part of it. You can just use it for capture. And the nice thing is you take that note and then you can send it somewhere else, like using the share sheet, or you could just copy and paste. So the thing can start there before you know where it's going to go yet. Because usually when you have an idea, it's not the right time to say where it goes or who does it, or even if you do it. Like if you capture directly into a project, like how many things end up in that project that when you look at, you're like, yeah, I'm not doing these. If you're lucky. Otherwise, you just keep feeling bad about them.
Say more.
So you don't lose the idea. You can capture it first. You can use the share sheet or copy and paste. It can go where you need it to go. And you can stop and take longer to think about it. Rephrase it, for example. I mean, if I add something to Siri, it's not usually the right phrasing for like a real like capital T task. I haven't like sat down and thought like, okay, can I visualize this action happening? Do I know what tools I would be using to make it happen? Do I know what that would look like? I don't think about that when I'm capturing verbally. And some people do. I'm just not one of them. And so thinking about like how you capture things versus how do you need to see them later, those may not be the same thing.
So then what's the process for you for going back to actually process those things that you've captured?
So there are actions in it. In general, I do not believe in badges. That's that little red circle that says how the number of things wanting your attention. However, You can turn that on as an inbox number if you need to gamify inbox processing, which some people do.
So now we're talking about email inbox because
no, I'm talking about your capture items. If you let them get like more, so you can see, are there things in there needing to be processed or not?
Okay.
And sometimes you just write it down and then you have a chance to rephrase. But the point is I didn't have to go into the app. I have the more advanced version because high automation. So I can send mine straight to OmniFocus and like, okay, now I've thought about it enough. I can give it the right project. I can give it the right context. Or you can add it to reminders, or you can add it a bunch of other places after that. Or you can turn it into an email and send an email right from there.
So as you're talking about this, I just had an idea that I'm like kind of excited about.
Yeah.
Do you like Star Wars?
Yeah, I think I kind of, yes, I love Star Wars.
Okay. So 3CPO. You know 3CPO.
Mm-hmm. C3PO, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So think about this as an acronym. So CPO, capture, process, organize.
I like that acronym. The 3 goes in the middle, but that's okay.
Wait, what?
C3PO.
Did I do the dyslexic version?
Yeah, that's okay.
I think I've always thought it was, wow.
Yeah,
huh.
That's okay.
That's embarrassing. That's okay. I'm leaving it in.
No, that's a brilliant acronym.
C3PO. Really? My brain has to adjust.
Unless I had a like dyslexic fit this morning.
Oh my gosh. Which is it? I think you're right.
I mean, I've been known to do it.
All the Star Wars like fans are like, oh, this is painful. All right. So I'm not like
I never say I'm 100% right, even when I am like actually 100% sure. Because like,
yep, because
I've learned.
Okay. So what about apps like Notion? Are you familiar with Notion?
I am familiar with Notion. I haven't used it for very much. The number one rule applies, which is make sure you like interfacing with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's a knowledge management system. I know people who have used it for tasks. Do you like interfacing with it? And do you have like a rubric for yourself? What's the theme? What is this to me? Sort of like what am I putting in this particular drawer? or what's my legend? Like know what your function is for it, because it's so easy to get lost in all of it.
Knowledge management system. Like I don't think I've even heard that phrase before. Like what? Tell me more.
There's been this rebirth of like information systems where it's like, I want to capture ideas and notes, Obsidian and Notion, and I will forget the names of all of them because there have been so many lately. People have gotten in camps and like, I'm gonna fight you over my thing I love. It's weird. Devon Think is a really old one that's only on Mac, but like it's old school in terms of doing that. But it's a way to like, I have a bunch of information and I want to organize it. Depending on how you visualize things, you may be more drawn to one than the other because we're so strongly visual.
Mm-hmm.
How do you visualize it and does it work with you is very personal, but it's also a rabbit hole. So if you're going to look into it, please make sure you know what your function, like what do you need with it first? Because that'll help you decide, but also decide if you should.
Well, when I hear people talking about wanting to get into like Evernote, I ask, well, what do you want to use it for?
Yes.
And like often people say, well, I just heard so many people use it and find it helpful. It's like, that's not a good reason to look at Evernote.
Function first. What are you hoping to get out of it?
So for listeners who maybe like started by listening to like earlier episodes of my podcast, then maybe like either haven't listened for a while, and they're just kind of getting caught up. So I used to be a big Evernote person. I haven't opened Evernote in probably 3 years.
Easily longer. Yeah.
Right. I use Google Docs for like all notes because it's just so easy to search and it's everywhere.
And you have to do a lot of sharing. And so that's a lot of your work. Whereas if you're not sharing with people, you can just make a purely like, what do I like? And a while ago, you talked about sticking to one as opposed to rotating through them all the time. It's something that, you know, sometimes people really just need accountability on it. If I start working with somebody who's been circling, that's the first thing we're gonna touch on is, so what one are you going to stick to? You can change your mind later, but I'm going to ask you about it the next time we meet. And so you better have a reason for it, or otherwise it's going to be a weird thing like, why didn't you stick to it? And if you have a reason, that's fine. But like what we need is just really a reason to stop looking and just work with one. Because it really is only by working with something and trying it on an ongoing basis that we learn what we really need.
All right. So what about Trello?
I use Trello with my collaborator because we just need something simple to touch base and have some checklists. Like, what's our pre-meeting checklist, our post-meeting checklist. We have some of our roles defined in there. And so we just really run some of our shared projects together in that because we have our own systems.
What about Teams? Like task lists for Teams?
I have never touched that. Although on Trello, some people love it because they love moving cards. If you want to use the checklist, the thing to be aware of is it's a lot of extra steps to get in to make the checklist.
Okay.
And so for some people, it just ends up being too hidden for them, but some people really like it. And if you need to share, it's the first, go there first. It's free, it's easy, it's simple. And then if you need more stuff like Asana next and then something more. But if you've never used Microsoft Teams one.
It's interesting what with Asana, one of the things that I didn't talk about, probably one of my favorite features for it. I have all these different like project boards. I probably have maybe 15 project boards that are like in my favorites. So even more than that, but ones that I check in on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's like, well, is that this project or is it that project? And with Asana, you don't have to choose. You can have one task live on multiple project boards. And if you update one, it updates them everywhere.
That is pretty beautiful.
It's just like, I've been needing something like that for so long. And so it's like, even when my Asana gets a little overwhelming because there's so many things, but just having that ability, because I can have a board that's only I see, and I can share it with someone else who I also want to see it for kind of maybe accountability, or they're involved in it, or I've assigned something to someone, but I also want to have it on my list to be able to track for accountability that I've assigned this thing. All right. So I just find that to be super, super helpful.
Yeah. That's really cool. I mean, this isn't task management, but I visualize a lot of my tasks using mind maps. And so I'll do that with the connected node where you connect two nodes on two different mind maps.
Okay. So this is very relevant for me right now. So I've been using Simple Mind. It's a mind mapping app for about 10 years. And I do all of my yearly goal planning on it.
Okay.
I decided this year I am getting off of this app because I have my iMac and I have a MacBook and I have my phone. And it's like old school cloud syncing problems where if I left it open on one computer, which I usually do because I don't close stuff, right? And I go to open it and work on it another one, and it creates these sync errors. And then I'll have like, which version of 2021 goals version 11114? It's like, oh my God. I'm like, done. This is so unnecessary.
Oh, yeah.
So another tool that's a visual tool that I've been using for almost as long is it's now called Miro. It used to be called Real Time Board. And it's just basically a giant digital whiteboard that you can basically use any kind of visual medium. You can add files to it. I love it. So I started working on my mind map for this year's goals in that. I don't know if I love it though. Like what do you use for
It's
mind
really
mapping?
meant for teams first.
Miro?
Miro? Yeah.
Miro, am I saying it wrong?
Miro is how I've heard it.
Miro.
But if you've never heard people say it,
It's
like
true.
you say it however you say it in your head. I think that's what they said on an ad I heard.
I love when my son will say a word. My son's a really like voracious reader. And so he'll say a word that he's read, but he's never heard it. And I was like, what do you, oh, you mean this? And he's like, but I like to say it like that. I'm like, okay, but you're saying it wrong.
My nephew does the same thing.
It's like, hey, if you learn that you've been saying it wrong, just say it differently. Like, because people, the point of
and he probably will. Like, they just get embarrassed.
I know, it's just funny because he's just very matter of fact about it. I was just like, no, I like to print it that way. I was like, oh, okay. Well, I like to be understood. Okay, so what do you use for mind mapping?
So I'm using MindNode. I do like it a lot, although it did recently go to subscription, which you always have to warn folks about because remembering to cancel and ADHD and blah, blah, blah. I would not probably choose, but like it was also one of the only non-subscriptions when I started using it. I just use it really intensely for 4 months and then not at all for 4 months. I'm just like, really?
Sounds about right.
I didn't even know it though, because they're letting my old version work with all the same features. So yeah, I use MindNode, which is Apple only.
So let me ask you for clarification. When you say went to subscription, are you talking about just the pricing model?
The pricing model changed to subscription for the product, which I was just...
Which is the wave of the future. I mean, that's where everyone is going. And for myself...
It's not very ADD friendly.
So okay, let me make a counter argument to that point. You know what's even less ADHD friendly? When you are so dependent on this app that has been free and it stops getting supported and it breaks. And now you have to
That
find
is bad also.
You know,
unpaid is also bad.
Right? Like when people say, "Oh, I want it free," I'm like, you don't actually want free apps. Like it,
No.
like it. I was testing. I forgot what tool I was testing. I think it was some to-do list app, and it had these pop-up ads that were in her. I'm like, hell no! Like done, delete. Like
no,
awful.
No. You want to pay for an app. I worry about it with task management, especially because we can get that old guilt feeling so easily with tasks that then if you add on top of it, I feel bad because I haven't used it and I keep paying for it.
Yeah.
I worry about that.
You know, one of the things we do in in our alumni community, like twice a year, is we'll have everyone go through and do an audit of their like Apple subscriptions and all their other subscriptions and like find those things that you forgot that you've been paying for and just go cancel them.
Yeah.
So you can end up maybe create a recurring reminder to go and do that, to do an audit of all your subscriptions.
But the reminder, though, for a subscription, that requires so much more willpower than we give it credit for. What it might be is schedule co-working time to unsubscribe.
You know what I've actually been doing, at least with Apple stuff? So if I go to like subscribe for something, with most of the Apple subscriptions, you can cancel it the same day you bought it, and you have access to it until the end of your paid time. And so you don't have to think about it again.
Yeah, you can do that for some of them. And it's all in one spot. You can look at them all in one spot, which is nice at least. It's not the AOL days, but yeah, I'm not old.
I still might have an AOL email address that is like for like really old things that I log into still. So whenever I'm like bringing somebody new onto my team and like, cause I think I use an AOL address to log into my media host where I upload the podcast for. And I'm having to like, share that login information. I'm like, okay, don't laugh. Ready? It's blah, blah, blah at AOL.com.
Yeah. No, that's always what you get is don't laugh.
Oh, I love it. Okay. So
totally a thing.
If because I talk to people too who are just like, I've tried them all. None of them work for me.
What was the least bad?
Yeah, least bad.
And we can start with like, are you a notebook person? Because it's okay to be a notebook person. It's not, there's this whole guilt shame thing of like, I have these complicated tasks, so I need a complicated system. And although that is occasionally true, like the fact that you're struggling doesn't mean that you need a complex system. Your struggles are validated by the fact that you're struggling. And sometimes the simple solutions really are the best ones.
I just remember when I was going through my own like my app hopping days, that I created a rule for myself that before I switch apps, I actually have to do at least one item off the task list before I switch apps. And then if there was an easy way to like bring the tasks from one app to another, I wouldn't do it. I would actually opt for the difficult way because it has to be really worth it, right? It's like
an audit.
Exactly. It's a great way to cleanse. Like that maybe might be a good strategy every couple of months. Like if you have two apps, like go between the two, but manually transfer. So it forces you to decide, all right, what am I just not going to do?
And some have a built-in way. Like if you're using something like a notes app or TaskPaper or something, like you make a new list and you just only move over the ones that you're really sure you want to use. In OmniFocus, you can create a new sync thing. Now, if you don't finish in one go, you are stuck in limbo, but you can just drag and drop from one to the other one. You just have to finish it. But that really does force you in a way that you can't mimic any other way. It's why every few years I'm going to start an iPhone from scratch because it's too hard to purge my old apps I'm not using. It's way easier to just only install the ones I'm really going to use.
I did that a couple of years ago. That's a really good idea. I'm probably benefit from doing that
Make it
again.
A conscious choice with the default of no, I don't bring it over, or I'm going to really consider, does this need rephrasing? Does this need extra support? But with the default of no, and then you're making a conscious physical action. There's something magic about that.
So I think we are kind of running here out of time. So Brittany, how can people learn more about you, find out more about the course that you created to help people with this? Share your info.
My website is conquer.consulting. Yeah, that's all there is to it. My professional Twitter is conquer_consulting. And my YouTube is at ADD Liberator.
At ADD Liberator. All right. We will put links to all of that in this episode's show notes by going to ADHDrewired.com/whatever episode number this is. I don't know. I haven't thought that far ahead, but just look at your app and you'll see what number it is. Brittany Smith, thank you so much. This was fun. I definitely want to have you back on again.
Yeah, it'd be great. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Thank you so much. This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is ADHDrewired.com. You can find time-stamped summaries and additional resources for each episode. Apply to join our free and secret Facebook community. Learn more about our award-winning intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. Join the Adult Study Hall virtual co-working membership community. Find all the other podcasts on the ADHD Rewired podcast network. Sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content that you won't hear anywhere else. And use the search tool to find episodes on specific topics. You can do all of this at ADHDrewired.com. While you're there, click on the Patreon button. If you are a regular listener, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to you, the listener, but it's not free to produce. Plus, patrons get cool perks like ad-free episodes and access to recordings of coaching calls, and $25 a month patrons can join me once a month for a group coaching call. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHD Rewired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. Subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube to see selective interviews and other videos I've made. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends, family, your therapists, your coaches, doctors, siblings, parents. And if you, your coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at the website, ADHDrewired.com. If you are a member of CHAD, ADA, or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this show and all the shows on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. And if you really loved this particular episode, please hit share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I do count on you to help spread this message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other app that supports reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at Audible by going to audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Here is my list of must-listen-to audiobooks updated July 2021. Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Attached by Amir Levin and Rachel Heller. Atomic Habits by James Clear. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. Crucial Conversations by Carrie Patterson. The Coaching Habit by Michael Stainer. The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Rest by Alex Sujong Kim Pang. The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins. Make It Stick. The Science of Successful Learning by Peter Brown. The Productivity Project by Chris Bailey. Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions, Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. I always recommend to my coaches and admin that they read that book. The One Thing by Gary Keller, a required reading for all of our coaching group members. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Baden. The 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. And if you're looking for something a little bit more magical, I have fallen in love with the Harry Potter series, and the narrator, Jim Dale, is amazing. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brene Brown bus, all of her stuff is great, starting with Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, and The Power of Vulnerability. And if you're an entrepreneur or leader, be sure to check out her book, Dare to Lead. Do you have something that you would like to share? Click on the podcast tab at ADHD Rewired. click the button to be a guest at the top of the page and schedule a 15-minute interview. This is Eric Tivers, reminding you to keep learning, growing, and connecting. Self-care is not selfish. No matter what you get done or don't get done, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, we can do hard things. And we don't need to do them in the hardest way possible. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.